I originally wanted to write my paper about how an author can be wrong, and after some thought, I came to the conclusion that my perspective and the author's perspective can both be right. So, hello, welcome to my weird perspective on Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. Before we get into our topic, we should talk about what Bloodchild is about, a synopsis in a sense. Bloodchild takes place from the perspective of a young man named Gan, who was a Terran or human living on an alien planet dominated by the Tlick, an insect like species. Gan becomes a carrier for the alien species' eggs because the Tlick cannot reproduce on their own. So at first, Gan does not question his role as a carrier. He is happy and almost content with his role. However, that changes when he watches a man go into labor. Talik instructs him to go slaughter an animal and bring it back. But when he returns with the animal, he watches in horror as the Talik removes the developing eggs from the laborer's insides, killing him in the process, as well as the Tlik puts the eggs inside of the animal. This scene forces Gan to question his own willingness to serve as a carrier, as well as his love for Tigatoy, a Talik maternal figure, and his growing repulsion for her as a controlling alien being. I think this is a really cool topic for a book, but I think where my perspective came from were Octavia's words in her afterword. They kind of shook me. She says, "It amazes me that some people have seen Bloodchild as a story of slavery. It isn't. It's a number of things, though. On one level, it's a love story between two different beings. On another, it's a coming to age story in which a boy must absorb disturbing information and use it to make a decision that will affect the rest of his life." And, the rest talks about the boundary the book breaks as like along the lines of gender roles and sci-fi. So the second part of that I really understood, but the first part, whereas the book is about love, really caught me on guard. In fact, it made me want to reconsider my thoughts on the book. So I re-skimmed through it again, and I thought that no, I think this book is definitely about slavery. And like I said before, after some thought, I came to the decision that my view also aligned with Butler's, whereas this love that she's talking about can be achieved through my perspective, which is slavery. I think the reason why I got to this perspective is because of this small process that I noticed that was happening in the book. And the first part of that process is how desperate the Tlicks are before the Terrans arrive. We know that they can't reproduce with one another, so we know that they're completely on edge and they are looking for a way to increase their species because if not, they're going to die out. So this kind of leads to the second part, whereas when the Terrans arrive, they're being completely animalized. They're being exploited and they're being used. When they arrive from Terra, I guess that's their home planet, a scuffle ensues, more like a fight, and of course the Terrans lose. So from that point on, the Terrans are put in these pens to only serve the purpose of just to be bred with, to serve as just like cattle. And if you were a human in that situation and you tried everything to get out of it, you sort of conform yourself to the fact that this is just your life now. This is just your environment. This is just the way you're supposed to live. Which is sort of the last part of the process that we're talking about here, domestication and mental instability. And I think those two things are the main setting of the book, because of Khan's perspective and how he sees things as normal. Um, it's kind of crazy how on our planet, women are the sole life givers versus on their planet now, men mainly give more life than the women do. And that's incredibly shocking for someone if you were just to switch those roles around and you were in that situation. And I know that would take a mental toll because that's one of the biggest parts of the reality that you'd have back on your home world. And we can kind of see this progression of what that shock begins to do from the passage of time in the book. So let's compare two Terrans. One can be Gan, and one can be this new Terrans that crash landed when the Twi'leks were desperate, way back when. Um, this new Terran is full of hatred, he feels abused, and he's shocked at his own pregnancy and the fact that he's going to have to keep doing it until he finds a mate and gets her pregnant, and that person has a son, and then that son has to do exactly what he did. Whereas he has to be pregnant and he has to carry this Twi'lek species versus Gan, who should honestly share the same perspective, and he doesn't do that just yet. But in the beginning, he does not at all. And he was born into this generation, whereas it's the opposite of that new Terrence, whereas he's okay with what he sees in his reality because it's his only reality. A baby born into slavery only knows slavery. And this shows a lot of Gan's character in the fact that he's super obedient to Tigatoy and the rest of the Twi'leks that give him any orders. Tigatoy has been in his life and his family's life since the beginning, so it's only natural for somebody that's a constant in your life for you to feel love to. And I think that love really goes forward into changing his mental stability to one of that new Terran that we were talking about. uh, this I think I'm referring to the turning point in the book that we described in the synopsis, where he had to see this man named Lomas have to give birth to these Tlick grubs that were in his body. So I'll read the passage really quick. I felt as though I were helping her torture him, helping her consume him. I knew I would vomit soon. I didn't know why I hadn't already. I couldn't possibly last until she was finished. She found the first grub. It was fat, deep red, with his blood both inside and out. It had already eaten its own egg case, but apparently it had not begun to eat its host. At this stage, it would eat any flesh except its mother's. Let alone, it would have gone on excreting the poisons that it had both sickened and alerted Lomas. Eventually, it would have begun to eat. By the time it ate its way out of Lomas's flesh, Lomas would be dead or dying, and unable to take revenge on the thing that was killing him. And after seeing this, Gan is really reeling from it. It's like that passage of time we were talking about finally caught up to him. And like we said, made him more like that post crash Terran we were talking about. Um, and the book really frames this as a really important part in showing that Gan is being tested and he has to accept um, sh- should I even love Tigatoy? Is Tigatoy a bad person? His mind fills with various questions, and he's trying to scatter to solve them. And this is shown by him, his mental stability really being driven to the edge, and him wanting to inquire about the people of the past and what his people were like. And I guess to refer back to Butler's thoughts about Gan having to make a decision came from this test where Gan went through the process of discovering his feelings, understanding that he is a slave, and that if he doesn't do this, maybe his family will be threatened. So in the end, he does go with mating with Tigatoy, but it's something that's very new to him, and it's something that uh, really makes him scared, and it's kind of a really morbid ending to the book. But in realizing what happened to his people as well as the pain that he goes through, uh, he finds an answer to his position of how do I deal with this love that I feel. And after coming to that conclusion, he does do it with Tigatoy. It really makes me understand that love that Butler is talking about between a captor and a captured. Whereas in the beginning, I think it could have been misconstrued that uh, it is about a book about this crazy person that loves this alien species that they were sickened onto, and that he actually has genuine feelings for her. These genuine feelings, actually, as reviewed, have come from a place where he had no choice but to feel them. So, yes, I think it is a love story. It's just a very sick one that comes from a very, very bad place.